All right, today is June the 1st, 2021, and today we are here with Scott Presler from Virginia. He stopped by Amarillo, and he's going to talk to the Amarillo Republican women tonight and give a presentation on what he does. And he's wearing a wonderful T-shirt that I think is excellent. It says, "Stop talking and start doing." Scott, tell us about your T-shirt, and then we're going to start talking about, let the voters know who you are, where you came from, how you got involved, and we'll just go on from there.
Well, my T-shirt is kind of my brand, my motto in life. You know, everybody wants to pontificate and they want to point out a problem without coming up with a solution. And I was just tired of being a part of the problem by not being the solution, even myself. And so I turned the finger back at myself and said, what are you doing? Stop talking, do something about it. And so I've just made it kind of my motto in life that this is how I'm going to live, by doing.
Fantastic. Who is Scott Presler?
The son of a retired Navy captain, a long-haired Eagle Scout, the award winner of the Ronald Reagan Award at CPAC in 2021, and started from humble beginnings. I graduated from George Mason University with a degree in criminal justice, so clearly I went into politics. I actually graduated with a 3.63, but I couldn't find a job. This was 2010, after the recession in 2007. And I applied for everything under the sun, but I couldn't find work. So I started walking dogs for a living, you know, because I wanted to show people there's no shame in a hard day's work and honest day's labor. I ended up working at an elementary school, one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. During that time, President Obama was re-elected. And very similarly to my motto of pointing the finger back at myself, you know, I was angry when President Obama was reelected, but I wasn't angry at President Obama. I was mad at myself. Where was I knocking on doors? Where was I registering voters? Where was I getting out the vote? So I said, I'm going to do something about it. 2013, I started volunteering for the Republican Party of Virginia. I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with it because I met wonderful people and I felt like I was making an actual difference in my community. So in 2014, I said, Scott, you're going to get a job in politics. You're going to. And the reason why, I don't know if our viewers can see that I'm wearing cowboy boots, but I am. I moved to the great state of Texas in 2014 for my first ever political job to help elect Governor Greg Abbott. And after that rewarding experience, and where in that year we took the Senate, we took governorships, it was a wonderful year for the Republican Party. And I knew how important the presidency was in 2016. You know, for me, it was always about defeating Hillary Clinton, stopping the Democrats from having control over the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Because I'm a long-term thinker. I'm not thinking 4 weeks or 4 months ahead. I'm thinking 40 years ahead. And so I wanted to do everything in my power to save the Supreme Court. I worked for the Republican Party of Virginia in 2016. We did win the White House, not in the Commonwealth, but nationwide. And I've spent the last 4 years of my life traveling the country, registering thousands of new voters, training tens of thousands of volunteers, and cleaning up our cities. President Trump inspired me to take a look at our most neglected and abandoned cities like Baltimore. And I was disappointed because I saw that people were quick to judge, quick to point the finger, quick to blame, but nobody was doing anything about Baltimore. Everybody wanted the clicks and they wanted the likes and they wanted the attention for showing how trash-ridden Baltimore had become, but nobody was doing anything. And so I just had this idea. I said, okay, I'm going to go to Baltimore. And I tweeted it out to my followers, and then it went viral, and everybody wanted to help. And then I was like, uh-oh, because I had to come through with my promise. So within 6 days, we organized a cleanup, and we picked up 12 tons of trash in 12 hours in one day. in the most dangerous streets of America in West Baltimore. And it occurred to me, wait a second, Scott, if you can clean up 12 tons of trash in 12 hours and organize a community to come together without funders, without backers, without the government, without any help whatsoever from big entities as a private citizen, why can't I do this across the country? And so I did. Within the last 2 years, I've organized cleanups in Atlanta, Austin, Baltimore, Chicago, Denver, Duquesne, Detroit, Houston, Kenosha, Los Angeles, Miami, Milwaukee, Portland, Pittsburgh, Philly. And I was even protested for picking up trash in an act of love in San Francisco, California. And so my message to the viewer, my message to the listener, my message to the people of Amarillo tonight is I want them to understand that I'm an average, ordinary American citizen, but I did something extraordinary because in our society, which tells you to say, who will, I dared to say, I will. And I want everybody to make their motto in life that they will be the people to step up to the plate if they see an injustice or if they see a problem, and they will say, I will.
Fantastic. Well, you could sing that Woody Guthrie song, I've Been Everywhere.
True.
You could change that around and make that your theme song.
Absolutely. Well, this year alone, I have plans to visit 26 states, and definitely I call America my home at this point.
Well, that's an interesting story. So you're going to be talking to the High Plains Republican women tonight and putting on a presentation. So for those that can't make it, what are you going to talk to them about that you want to tell the voters?
Certainly. Well, number one, I want to talk to them about how to run for office, especially at the state and local level. Congress is important, and I do hope that we take back the House in 2022, but ultimately, if people want to harness true power, then I encourage moms, business owners, normal, average, concerned citizens, run for city council, run for school board, run for state and local government. Because think about COVID for a second. Democrats were able to shut us down because they controlled the cities. They controlled the mayorships. They controlled, in some cases, the sheriffs. And if we control those local positions of power, we will be able to push back against the federal government. That's the beauty of federalism, right?
That's right.
That states have autonomy, that states have the true authority. And I'm also going to be talking about voter registration, because here in the great state of Texas, one thing that people may not know is if you want to register voters and actually collect their form from them, you have to become what's called a volunteer deputy voter registrar. And I'm going to be explaining that process because I want as many VDVRs here in Amarillo as humanly possible. And I'm also going to be talking about the most important thing affecting our country right now, which is not illegal immigration, which is important, which is not the rising gas prices, inflation, lumber, steel, which is not even jobs. It's election integrity. And so I'm going to be describing action items that normal citizens can take here in the state of Texas to ensure, for example, that when Governor Greg Abbott does call for that special session, that we're able to pass bills like SB 7, which will give us a better shot at having fair and free elections here in the state of Texas.
Very good. Yeah. What I think is, and we've got it ready to go, but I think a lot of the voters are nervous about these electronic voting machines. I don't believe they feel comfortable with them. And we could argue one way or the other about whether or not they're correct. But there's one thing that we do know is correct, and that's a paper ballot.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I believe we should go back to paper in Texas. because that just eliminates any confusion.
Well, and it gives a paper trail.
It gives
right?
a paper trail, and it's a true secret ballot. Because when I ask my election administrator, I talk to people at the Secretary of State, I say, can you assure me with 100% confidence that the numbers that are coming out of those electronic machines are 100% correct? They say, I can't tell you that. That's a problem. I don't have to accuse Dominion of doing anything wrong. Maybe it's right, but we don't know. And maybe they don't know either. So why not just go back to the way we did it 20 years ago, vote in our schools, in our precincts, with paper? And we have no problem.
I'm all for it. You know, if somebody says, what's election integrity? I always say voter ID, paper ballots for a paper trail, ban electronic voting, and last, punctually remove people from the voter rolls when they unfortunately pass away or move to another county or state. And that's the most important thing, especially if they want to do this universal sending out applications to people unsolicited. We need to have a better process where the secretaries of state are actually punctually removing these voters from the rolls.
I think there's a simple solution to that, and that's part of my, actually I can we don't have it 100% finished, but it's pretty close. But what I propose is that if you miss an election, you come off the roll. Costs nothing, simple, and if you skip an election, you just have to re-register. That would increase voter participation and keep the rolls pristine. Simple.
I'm open to listening and learning. I'm
It's too
not
easy.
100% there yet, but we
The
have to
problem
do a better job. Here, the problem is that we don't inspire people to vote. It took a candidate like Donald Trump and, dare I say, Bernie Sanders to encourage a wave of young people to get involved into politics. We have to do a better job of Republicans defining ourselves. And what does it mean to be a Republican? Like, for example, I'm going to talk about this tonight. If somebody said, Scott, what does it mean to be a Republican? Well, at the foundation of being a Republican is that we put the Constitution first. And we believe in liberty, freedom, and choice. And that means going into policy. No vaccine passports, no mask mandates, open our schools, open our businesses, sanctuary states for Second Amendment rights, protect women's sports, fund the police, defund the government, boycott, divest, and sanction China, stop giving money to countries that hate us, veterans before illegals, and finish the gosh darn wall to secure our border. Are any of those things that I just said controversial?
No.
Is what I just said pretty common sense?
You sound like a genuine Republican.
Exactly. But we don't do a good job of articulating
That's right.
how we're fighting for the people. Because if you think about the Democrats, and I don't agree with them ideologically, but they're very good at branding and they're very good at articulating what their message is. So, for example, if you said, what are the Democrats fighting for? Okay, they're fighting for 15. They're fighting for Medicare for all. They're fighting for the Green New Deal. I don't agree with any of those positions, but I know exactly what the Democrat Party is vying to produce. And that is our problem, is what is our message going into 2022 that we're actually going to win back the House and Senate?
So what do you think the Democrats are really for?
I mean, the Democrat Party is about mandates. The Democrat Party is about coercion. The Democrat Party is about the government telling you what you can and cannot do, which is difficult for me because I can't reconcile people voting against their ability to have liberty and freedom in their lives, which shows me that we are failing as a party to encourage people to become a Republican, because to me, it's so simple. You either have the government telling you how you can and cannot live, or you can be a Republican and have choice and choose what's best for your family without the government intervening in your life.
So basically you're saying the Republicans believe in self-government.
Sure.
And the Democrats believe in government
Forced. Yes.
But isn't that easier to just be told what to do?
Sure. How am I going to convince people, for example, who are reliant, who are getting their money from the government, to not vote for the government? That's a pretty hard sell, right? If somebody is subsidized, or if somebody is Section 8, and I'm not saying that disrespectfully, I'm just using that as an example, how am I going to convince them to vote against a bigger government, which is giving them the life that they live? That's pretty difficult.
Well, it's happened throughout history. Perhaps we're at the final stages. It's whether or not the people have the courage to stand up and do the right thing. I think we have the capacity. It's possible. How probable is my concern, because you have so many. I was thinking about it the other day. The problem is people like socialism. They want their wind energy subsidy. They want their oil subsidy. They want their ag subsidy. They want their federal loan subsidy. They want their SBA loan. They want all these federal programs, but they don't want to. So it's very difficult once the government gets their hooks in people. They want their Section 8 subsidy. Landlords want their Section 8 money. So they don't want to have to collect it from a regular tenant. And it's a problem. And now they're buying people with stimulus checks.
Mm-hmm.
So once you start that, and now you've got the argument for UBI, Universal Basic Income, because the Democrats know once you give somebody something, you can never, ever take it away.
It's true.
So how do we overcome that?
Well, I mean, one way that we can help to overcome that is, I would like to see the federal government having to balance the federal budget, but I mean, that's going to take control of Congress, and that's going to take a 2/3 majority of Congress in order to pass something like that. But we need leaders that are actually going to fight and that are going to say, this is wrong. Like, for example, I think it was Senator Cruz or Rand Paul who was saying the other day that, we spent $1.5 million studying lizards or something. The federal government was spending this money on
mating habits of lizards.
And it's like, okay, why aren't we spending that on at least cancer research or medical funding or something more important? So we need to expose the hypocrisy. And like, for example, you talk about subsidies with wind energy. Who are the people that are pushing for wind and solar, which actually I'm for. I'm for sustainable energy in addition to coal and fossil fuels. But the thing is, these wind turbines kill hundreds of thousands of birds a year. Where's PETA? These people, the Democrats, they say they love the animals and they love the environment. Well, it's actually hurting the environment. And the turbines, I've heard, are not biodegradable. So what happens to these turbines when they are no longer able to function? They're just buried and you have a graveyard of non-biodegradable material, which is not friendly to the environment. So we need people that are going to do a better job of exposing the hypocrisy, not only of the Democrat Party, but of big government in general.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily Democrat, Republican. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said government.
Yeah.
It's both sides have created this problem. I think the Republicans are just as, to me, the Republicans are more guilty because we get that from the Democrats. They are what they say they are. Their philosophy is one of theft. They start teaching it at a young age in kindergarten, that theft is a good policy.
Oh, no, Republicans are complicit.
But they call it redistribution. They put a fancy name on it so they don't understand why we have theft. To me, it's pure theft. They're taking from one voter because they think he has too much.
Mm-hmm.
And they're buying the vote from another because they tell that voter that they don't have enough. But it's really not the voter that's coming up with it. It's the politician.
Sure.
And so I trust the voters way more than I trust the politicians. But if you really listen to what the Democrats say, their philosophy is one of theft and redistribution. And once people get that in their head, it's a very scary, slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
And they just will take everything you have if you'll let them. It's just a matter of time.
Well, it's also the Democrat Party. The biggest difference between Democrats and Republicans, besides Democrats being about coercion and mandates and Republicans being about freedom and liberty, is Democrats want everyone to think they are victims, right? Mm-hmm. And Republicans, we are about accountability and self-determination. And there's a big difference between equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome. And that's what Democrats don't understand, is we want a level playing field. But at the end of the day, I was a dog walker that self-determined my own life. I didn't have anything handed to me. No job was given to me. I've earned every single opportunity in my career because I was determined to succeed. And I had an ideology that I wasn't a victim. I was going to turn myself into a victor. And so there is a difference in that we also need to do a better job of tailoring our message as Republicans to Democrats. And so, and I get dinged on this, and some people don't agree with me. But like, for example, with Black Lives Matter, if somebody says to me, Black Lives Matter, I actually turn it around and I say to them, yes, I do agree with you that Black lives do indeed matter and have value and should be recognized and should have dignity and humanity. Because think about it for a second. Republicans will be so quick to say all lives matter, but what we're doing in not tailoring our message to people who think differently than us, just because their brains are wired in a different capacity, which isn't me being disrespectful, it's just how it is, you're shutting the door in your face of ever earning that person's vote. But if I first agree with you and I say, you know what, I do believe Black Lives Matter, and that's actually why I vote Republican, because I believe that every black, white, and brown business person should be able to keep their businesses open without the government telling them how they can and cannot operate, if they can and cannot open, if they can and cannot pay their employees. And I believe in building cities up, not burning them to the ground. And I believe in school choice, and that the best opportunity to overcome poverty is an education and home ownership. And for these reasons, because I believe Black Lives Matter, I vote Republican. And I think that's a much better way to have dialogue than to just say all lives matter, and then boom, the conversation is over. You're never winning that vote, and you've just shut the door in your own face.
Yeah, instead of reacting, you're engaging.
Yes.
That's right. Very well said. Well, I think we have a lot of, I believe that many Democrats, if not most, actually agree with most Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't I think that most people, no matter what party they think they affiliate with, basically all believe and want the same things. There's a very few percentage of people that truly believe in Marxism, where the state should control everything, that people shouldn't have self-determination. Very few people believe that. So how can we engage the Democrats in the proper way to help them understand that it's not about labels, Republican and Democrat. It's more about individualism versus collectivism.
The best way to do it is show them by doing. Having people like Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida. We have to do a better job of when we elect Republicans into office, that we have to hold them accountable to actually provide for the promises that they made on the campaign trail. And if we want to win over voters, then let's show them through our conservative policies that work, that our messages are best for you to have the most liberty and freedom in your life. And I mean, look no further than California losing a congressional district. Look no further than New York losing a congressional district. Where are people moving? They're moving to North Carolina. They're moving to Florida. They're moving to Texas. Republican, Republican, Republican. And so that is how we win the ultimate culture war, is we show them by doing. We show them by our actions. You have to walk the talk.
I've always thought if I was going to suggest something to some of these, well, even Trump, and I mentioned it and nobody picked it up, but I would show a picture of Baltimore in 1950 and a picture of it today. A picture of Detroit in the 60s. Detroit was the highest per capita income in the nation. It was a beautiful place. Then show it today. If you show those contrasts, Los Angeles, San Francisco, when it was under Republican control, conservative principles are applied, versus when the liberal principles are applied, it's night and day difference. And that's all you have to do. Show the people those photos, and maybe they could get it.
I'm not so certain. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to you. Look at San Francisco. People see it. I mean, they have a defecation.
But they can't remember what it was like before.
But how are they not putting the pieces together of how terrible things have gotten and who the current leadership is, and yet they still seem to vote the same way? I mean, I hate to say it. Some people, they hate the Republicans so much, they will vote democratically, even if it meant things could get better under Republican control. Some people will just never be able to change, even with facts, even with faced with the truth. They will still vote democratically.
It sounds like you're describing mental illness.
I didn't say that. Well, it's just, it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. I mean, truly, I've been to the worst of the worst. They call, and I love Pennsylvania, but they call Philadelphia Filth-adelphia. We even were doing a cleanup right near Kensington Park, which is called Needle Park. And I think the unfortunate reality of human nature is sometimes you really do have to hit rock bottom before you realize how bad things have gotten before you can make a change and move forward in a different positive direction. And that's what I worry about. I worry if our country has to get really bad before we'll make a positive forward direction.
That's the concern. Yeah, I agree with you on that. So what place have you been to that you think is the absolute worst?
In Van Nuys, California, we picked up, right outside of LA, Los Angeles, we picked up 50 tons of trash at a homeless camp. And
Which is one camp?
One camp.
50 tons?
50 tons of trash.
100,000 pounds.
We're talking maybe from that green screen to here 3 times over. Trash maybe up to that American flag right there. And across the room, across the way, are homeless people living next to all this filth, where, by the way, in LA, they do have typhus, they do have bubonic plague, and I'm not saying that to exaggerate. That's something that they literally have. And we went out there and we were able to clean up 50 tons of trash in 6 hours. And even some of the homeless people were helping us. But here was part of the problem, is it was federal property leased out to the city. And so the city said, we don't have to clean this up. This is federal property. This is just leased out to us. So it took private citizens coming in to clean up the filth while there are rats, while there are all kind of, in this trash pile. And the thing that gets me the most is here are American citizens that I spoke to, and some are working, by the way. One gentleman worked on TV production sets there in LA, and he's homeless. And we take care of illegal immigrants first. That's honestly one of the biggest reasons why I'm a Republican, is my allegiance is to the American people. And I think it's wrong that we have homeless veterans, we have homeless Americans we don't take care of, but we reward people for breaking the law. We reward them and incentivize illegal behavior of having people come into our country, and we don't take care of our own people.
Yeah, it's sad. That's why, that's why people need to quit focusing on the federal government and do what you said earlier, focus on their local government, because it's all elections are at your county level. They're not at the state level. They're not at the federal level. They're at the county level. So what you started off with talking about, I think, is the most important thing. And you have your vote counts so much more leverage-wise at your local level than it does at the federal level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the state. The counties can push back against the state. It's your county commissioners. It's your county judge that matters. They can push back against the state, and it's your state governor that can push back against the federal government.
Well, even here in Texas, correct me if I'm wrong, but your school boards actually determine property tax values, right?
Well, we have a central appraisal district that assesses, but they set their rate.
They set the rate. And in part, what I've heard that some of the school boards are doing is they will raise the rate because they want more money for the school board. But what that does is it hurts the homeowner.
That's right.
It hurts the neighborhoods because they're fluctuating the price out of control. And so it shows you the importance of controlling those school boards and having good people who are honest, decent citizens to make sure that they aren't hurting the working class families.
Yeah, because when you raise taxes, that money goes to the lowest common denominator, which is the tenants and the homeowners.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to the property users, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you own a property, most people own one, but then you have people that own a lot, so it really negatively affects them. But that ends up being pushed down to their tenants, some of which might be on that HUD program, so it just exacerbates the problem. It's a cost of owning the property, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it reduces the value of the property.
Yes.
To me, property taxes make no sense, and we don't need them.
Oh, I
There's a
agree.
simple solution to that.
I would love to see the abolishment of the property tax. I mean, think about it for a second. If I've bought a home, why am I continuing to pay taxes on something that I've bought? Isn't that indentured servitude?
Absolutely.
Right? And so there has to be a better way. But yes, I would love to see, and actually I think that would be very popular if the Republican Party made a part of its platform abolishing property taxes.
Well, I've got it pushed up there, but to me, it's a simple solution. We already have it. Just charge a sales tax on a transaction, a real estate transaction, like any other item.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Amarillo, we have 8.25% sales tax. You pay the sales tax to the city when you buy a house. You can roll that into your note if you're paying cash, whatever. The market will adjust, but then you're done. You get rid of the appraisal districts. You get rid of all this government bureaucracy to try to figure out the values. But I used to represent a lot of people on their property tax problems in Austin back in the late 80s. And I saw, I mainly did it on their investment property, but I'd always get them down because I had the market. Everything that sold in Travis County for 2 years, I sold it. But then they want me to help them on their house, and they're like, many of them would have to sell their house in Travis County because the property taxes they were paying on it. And this is in the late 80s. That's 25 years ago or more. Or is it 30? 35. They would have to sell the house because it was being assessed to where the property taxes were more than what they paid for their house every single year.
Sure.
And they were retired. They bought it in 1960. 25 years later, the taxes are more than they paid for the house every year. and that's just wrong.
And think about, like I said, if these are retired people, they're fixed income.
That's right.
Right? They're not making more money.
That's
with
right.
inflation and rising property taxes. It's going to be less and less. And then we wonder why people become homeless and they can no longer afford to pay their property taxes. So we would be helping working class families by doing so.
Yeah, it occurs to me from time to time. Be a lot easier.
Absolutely. Well, I want to change gears for a second and just say, what my goals are for the future.
Fantastic.
But going into 2022, of course, I want to win the House at least. The Senate is not as important in my opinion because at least if we win the House, we can roadblock 11 million illegal immigrants from becoming citizens. We can roadblock D.C. becoming a 51st state, which is unconstitutional. We can put pressure on the Democrats not to end the filibuster rule. Because the only thing saving us right now, the only thing really is Joe Manchin, a Democrat from West Virginia. And the only reason why is because he's a squishy Democrat, meaning he's a Democrat elected in a heavily Republican state. So he knows he's vulnerable, and that's why he is not towing the Democrat Party line. And so in addition to those goals, I want the governorships. I want to reelect Ron DeSantis. I do want to primary Brian Kemp in Georgia. I'm sorry, but I don't trust Brian Kemp after the debacle of the 2020 election and his actions afterwards. Doug Ducey is term limited in Arizona, so we have an opportunity to elect a conservative governor and also replace Mark Kelly in the United States Senate in Arizona up in 2022. And we have an opportunity to flip Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, all 3 states that have been hijacked and locked down, businesses closed, churches closed, and those would be 3 important swing states to set ourselves up to pass election integrity reform by having the governor then being able to sign into law to make sure that we have fair and free elections going into 2024. So I'm very focused on, ultimately, my goal is I want the White House. I want 2024. But that means that we have to prepare ourselves now by passing election integrity reform going into 2022, win elections, and then do it again, pass more election integrity reform going into 2024. And I also want to fire a warning shot, proverbially and peacefully and democratically, to the Republican Party. And I want the GOP to know that they work for us, not the other way around. And I want them to know that this is our party, not their party, and that we aren't going back to the days of George Bush, and we aren't going back to Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and Lisa Murkowski. Those people don't speak for us. This is a new Republican Party, and 2022, ultimately, we have the power to define ourselves and to show the emergence of this new party, but only if we work for it. And so everybody, I'm encouraging them to join the Republican Party. I want them to become a precinct chair if there is a vacancy for the neighborhood or location that they live in. I want them to run for office, and I want them to knock on doors, register voters, write letters. But the fact of the matter is, if you're not willing to put in the work going into 2022, it's done. It's over. And especially if you want President Trump to run again, he's not going to run unless we win in the House and win the Senate. So the viewers listening need to know, if you really want Trump, or if you really want this America First Party, then you need to work now. I'm not talking September 2022. You need to lay the foundation at this very second.
Well, I think a lot of the problem is the Republican Party, because those things that happened in those 5 swing states where the Democrats arguably stole the election was because we didn't have strong party presence there to stop it. They ran over the few Republicans that were there, and nobody stood their ground. So to me, that's a failure of the Republican Party.
Yeah, unprepared. They had hundreds of millions of dollars, and I hate to say it, but, I think we had a little too much fun in the 2020 election. I mean, I was working my tail off, but we have to take a hard look at ourselves and go, did we do too many flotillas, too many boat parades, too many sign waves? And why didn't more people take off work on Election Day? I mean, if you can help save the country and fight for fair and free elections by taking off one day to have eyes and ears inside polling locations to make sure that we are able to record and report any shenanigans, why didn't you do it? Why didn't you take off? Why wasn't there a massive push for election judges? And that shows a lack of leadership from the Republican Party. And even right now, I hate to say it, Kevin McCarthy, what are you doing to push the party forward? Other than, I do agree with replacing Liz Cheney with Elise Stefanik. That's good. But where's the messaging? Where's pushing the party forward? What is our encouragement going into 2022 that's actually going to inspire voters to vote? And Ronna McDaniel, what are you doing too as the GOP chair? And with all due respect, why are you not taking the opportunity to listen to the grassroots, to the people on the ground, and actually put into practice what we, the voter, wants? So there's a lack of discipline, a lack of leadership, and 2022 is not in the bag. Just because the party opposing the president historically wins in midterm elections, even though we need 6 seats, I'm not so certain we're going to win the House, because I am just seeing a dereliction of duty from the party, which is why I don't support the party. I'm donating directly to the candidate himself or herself, and that's going to be my strategy moving forward.
Well, we need good, competent candidates to run for those House positions, and we need to get good, competent county chairs in those counties, in those states, even in Texas, that are competent and capable. And they're very hard to find. That's the challenge. But if we can do that, that'll solve a lot of problems. And then give them the tools they need to do the job.
Well, the reason why I'm here in Amarillo, and the reason why I'm traveling to 26 states is because people want to help. They just don't know how. They really do. They have a desire. They have this yearn to want to do something good, but they don't know what to do. So literally, I'm going to be talking about everything from door knocking applications to how to register a voter to, even if you can't register voters and knock on doors, what are some other ways that you can still become an activist? For example, something as little as sitting at Starbucks with a Stop Biden t-shirt. I used to register voters all the time at Starbucks wearing a Stop Hillary t-shirt, and it was simple as me sitting there having an open presence and being prepared with voter registration forms, always asking people, are you registered to vote at your current address? So there's something for everybody that they can do, whether you're 18 or 80 years old, but we just need people to step up. They got to do something. But it also means that we as leaders need to do a better job of identifying talent and encouraging that talent and mentoring that talent. Because some people, they may think, maybe I want to run for something one day, but I don't have backing, I don't have support. But if someone like you or me said, you know what, Cheryl, I think you'd be great for school board, and I'm willing to help you on that journey, boom. All it took was that one moment of encouragement from a leader in order to, spur that involvement.
Yeah. What I'm trying to do here, of course, is trying to get the younger people involved in the party. And that's very difficult. They're hard to, but we're making progress. Most of my new precinct chairs are all in their 20s.
Good.
And I'm very excited about that. I've got some more coming on. And I want people that are young and have the energy and ideas.
Well, we love our more mature individuals too.
Yes.
We
Well,
don't want to discount them.
They've got the wisdom, but we also need people that have the energy to go do the work.
Well, and how you do it is what I found is people are inspired by passion in action. But that goes both ways. It's about who gets them first. Because AOC, again, I don't agree with her ideologically, but is she passionate? Yes. Does she take action? Yes. And that's what I found with the work that I do in the cleanups is people, even I get messages all the time. They go, Scott, I hate everything about you. I think you're a terrible person. I hate your politics, but I love your cleanups. And if I can get somebody who hates me to respect me, that's a win. And so I think that is our strategy moving forward, is we have to show people the passion, the inspiration, that we're having fun. Yeah. Aren't the Democrats, they're what I call sore winners. You won the election, but you're miserable. I've never seen people, when Trump won, I was dancing in the streets, clothed. But I was, happy as a clam, and to see the Democrats just be so miserable and hateful, this is an opportunity for us to show the independent voter, the soft Democrat voter, we have policy, we have plans, and we're actually happy and having a good time. And I also want to say one thing too, that this is a historic opportunity for Republicans to win the women vote. We're seeing Democrats who, I think this is a really big issue, who are trying to take over women's sports, and they are negating the science and biological differences between men and women, which is just true. Things as simple as bone density, or the fact that women's hips biologically are larger and men's hips are smaller. These things can make a difference when playing sports. And with the Democrats always talking about equality and having everyone on a level playing field, this is an important opportunity for Republicans to say that, no, we are actually protecting women. We are standing for women's rights, and we are making sure that there is a fair level playing field for women. And I think that we should continue to push this and not run away from this issue.
Well, I think one of the complaints that Republicans tend to have is they say, well, we're doing all these, but we can't get our message out because the media won't get our message out. They change the narrative. They push the narrative that the Democrats want them to push. How do we overcome that?
I mean, I'm calling BS on that respectfully. Look at DeSantis. Even if they disagree with his policy, everybody knows that he just gave a $1,000 bonus, I believe, to teachers, right? So even if they were saying something negative about that, they were still pushing the policy out there. Do it anyway, right? And use alternative media sources. We have Parler, we have Gab, we have Telegram. You can have your own website. Look at how successful, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz have been doing their own thing. They don't need the media, quite frankly. I say just do it.
Well, I would think that I don't understand why they haven't done something like yank their FCC licenses, because they're violating the agreement they had when they got their licenses. They're supposed to report, not advocate. So they violated that. Why can't we just yank their licenses and shut them down?
Yank whose licenses?
The ABC, CBS, NBC.
Oh.
When they were granted those FCC licenses, they had a responsibility. Part of the reason they got the licenses is to benefit the public. Well, they've reneged on that agreement.
Well, pass legislation at the state level.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, look at what they're doing if somebody is banned from social media when they're running for office. They can now fine social media companies in Florida. Ultimately, look, I say it comes down to legislate. Let's pass legislation. And that's the importance of not just looking at Congress, but looking at, we need to win state houses. We need to win state senates. We have to control the state legislature in order to make progress.
So out-legislate them.
Out-legislate them, right? Change the rules. That's what the Democrats did.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about this tonight. In 2018, going into the midterm elections, what did the Democrats do after they lost the election? They started ballot harvesting, but it was legal. It was democratically done. It was done at the state legislative level. So you're right. Out-legislate them. I think it's a winning strategy.
Give them a little of their own medicine.
Yeah. Why not? And the best part is it's democratic, right? It's the consent of the governed. We're not doing anything illegal. We're doing it the right way. They're just mad that we're outsmarting them. That's why Stacey Abrams is in an uproar that, we now have voter ID in Wyoming, that we're passing election integrity legislation in Arizona, Georgia, Florida. And this is something that, I was speaking about since January. Use the trifecta state governments as a model in order to move forward to pass every legislation that we want. We can have no vaccine passports. We can have Second Amendment sanctuary states. We can have no taking in of illegal alien minors into our states. Boom.
I like it. So is this all that you do, or do you have another way to make a living, or do you just do this?
This is my life.
This is your total life.
So, yeah.
Your passion.
So when I go home to my lily pad, when I'm not doing events, basically I'm just sleeping. So my life is constantly politics. But I've never charged a dime. I've never asked for a speaking fee ever, and I'm very proud of that. And how I do all of the events that I'm doing across the country are I only ask very humbly for my travel and my lodging. And I've done everything from sleeping in RVs to bunk beds to cuddling with people's animals in their homes. So I've had a very colorful past in politics, but I do it because I want people to know my heart is in this for the right reason. I'm in this for the long term. I'm looking 40 years ahead, and ultimately I want people to know I give a darn. I care. So, the accolades and hopefully the financial reimbursement will come with victories in 2022, because people will remember Scott Presler was there. Scott Presler helped. He focused strategically on these congressional districts, on these states. And I have had, people reach out to me about doing a book deal, etc. But for me, I'm not going to do such a thing until probably even after 2022, because my focus, my goal, my mission is we have to have a big conservative victory in 2022. So that's kind of where my head is at right now.
Well, you go get them registered, and I'll pull them to the polls.
Okay. Deal.
We can do it. So you talk about looking 40 years out. So what do you see when you look ahead 40 years?
Well, hopefully I see that we still have a Supreme Court of 9 justices, not 17 or 19 or 30 or however many the
Let's just make
Democrats want to pack the court with. But ultimately, I hope to see a less polarized country. I hope to see a conservative country, and I hope to see that the policies and that the people that we are bringing into the party now are going to be the leaders of the future, and I want to be a part of that. I don't want to have a career in politics. I was telling Hunter earlier, I want to go into real estate. I want to invest because I know that the best way to have longevity and to be financially stable is to buy a property, and I'll be able to pass on a legacy to my family, to my children. And that's important to me too, of legacy. What is the legacy that I'm going to leave behind, and what is the legacy of our country? And that's something that I ruminate on constantly. So ultimately, I'd like to see that, 40 years from now, that our Constitution is still intact and that we are actually following the Constitution. Because right now we're not.
Right. Yeah, it's been trampled on, ripped apart. Which I don't understand why you couldn't get the 37 states together, kick out the other 13, and say, you're on your own. We're the U.S. You're your own country.
Well, look, if liberal policies and democratic policies are so great, why isn't everybody moving to California, right? Why isn't everybody moving to Illinois, New York? And we just need to do a better job of setting ourselves up for success. So, like, for example, I think the Republican Party should model ourselves kind of like the Jewish community and have our own enclaves where we have our own businesses, we have our own water, we have our own electricity, we have our own grocery stores. We have enclaves set up by conservatives for conservatives, and that will help promote the establishment of continued conservatives. So, why am I going to do business with Democrats if they want to destroy my life? Why am I going to finance them, to give my money, to give my resources? No, we need to do a better job of investing in us and our community. And I think that is a part of the 40-year goal.
Well, I guess the conservatives we could all just create one big co-op.
I'm okay with that.
We
No,
could all
really.
trade with one another.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
There will be a time. I mean, look at what they're doing to us, shutting down our bank accounts, coming after our jobs. We have to have a plan B, similar to social media. If you get banned from Twitter, where are you going to go? Well, I'm actually glad that Twitter and the social media companies did start banning us, because it forced us to create alternatives. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is we need to be forward thinking and come up with those alternatives now, because it could be a very real reality where they don't let you into a grocery store if you haven't had a vaccine, or they won't let you in because of your political preference. I mean, that isn't too far, I believe, hyperbolic to say that somebody wouldn't let you in your store because of the way that you think.
See, I don't know why we couldn't create our own internet. We could get Elon to throw some satellites up for us and just create our own internet.
Well, they have DuckDuckGo and other alternatives besides Google.
But I mean, a whole different structure outside of what is running, everything's running on now. It could actually be done.
That'd be wonderful.
Then we all go to Bitcoin and get out of the financial system. So it's possible. It's a good idea. We'll have to expand upon it. Well, I know you've got to get going for your event tonight, and I really want to thank you for coming by. It's been fascinating, and I've really enjoyed visiting with you. And good luck in your travels, and be safe.
Thank you.
I hope to see you around, and you're welcome back in Amarillo anytime.
I appreciate that. Well, hopefully we'll have some new members and new faces to join your county. And if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. And I'll be back.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.